At 4:46 a.m., my wife's phone lit up on the nightstand next to me, buzzing twice against the wood like it had something to confess. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't digging. I wasn't paranoid. I was awake. Because at my age, 63, you don't sleep. You monitor. You feel. And when something in your gut clenches before your brain even registers it, you listen. The screen lit up, bright in the darkness. A preview of the message. I didn't have to unlock it. Didn't need to. Just 7 words. Hotel room, 8:45, same time tomorrow. My first reaction wasn't anger, or pain, or even denial. It was silence. Clinical silence. The kind you hear in an operating room before they make the first cut. She lay next to me, snoring softly, her breath warm against the pillow like nothing had shifted. Like she didn't just detonate a mine inches from my face. I reached for my phone, took a screenshot. I didn't say a word. Didn't wake her. I stood up, walked to the bathroom, closed the door, and just stared at the image glowing back at me like it had teeth. My pulse wasn't racing. My fingers weren't shaking. This wasn't my first betrayal, not even close, but it was the most precise one. A hotel room. A repeat rendezvous. Casual. Familiar. So comfortable it fit into a sentence like an inside joke. She had a pattern. I had a timestamp. I had a room number. And now, I had a plan. You'd be amazed how many people listen to stories like this, nod along, feel that knot of recognition in their chest, and still forget to subscribe. Honestly, it's free, and it tells the team this is worth doing. More than 90% of listeners never hit the button. If you're one of them, change that. It helps more than you think. I stepped back into the bedroom and looked at her. Her face was peaceful. That's what burned most. The audacity of peace. I wondered if she'd dreamt of him, of tomorrow's rendezvous. If the robe she'd folded neatly by the door was for me or for room 845. If she even remembered which lies she told anymore. She stirred a little, rolled to her side. Her hand reached across the bed for me. I stood still and watched it land on cold sheets. Then I walked out. You don't run in situations like this. You don't scream. You don't throw things. You don't even ask, who is he? That question is a trap. It makes you small. It puts you in the position of the one left out. I wasn't left out. I was just repositioned. Silently. And unlike her, I knew how to keep a secret. I poured myself a cup of coffee in the kitchen. Black. No sugar. Same routine I've had for 30 years. The mug was chipped. She always said to throw it out, but I kept it. Stubborn habit. That little ceramic scar made it mine. A reminder that just because something's cracked doesn't mean it's broken, or useless, or weak. I looked at the calendar on the fridge. She had a work trip circled. A 2-day conference in Phoenix. We live in upstate New York. Right. I opened her laptop. She never locked it. Complacency does that to people. There was a browser tab still open. An order confirmation for a bottle of Glenmorangie and a fruit platter. Room delivery. 5 a.m. check-in. Same hotel. It was all there. Handwritten in pixels. She wasn't even careful. That's what got me. Not the betrayal, but the laziness. Like I didn't even deserve a challenge. Just a mop and a thank you for not bleeding on the rug. I checked the weather for Phoenix. Rainy. But the hotel was in a city 2 hours away, on the coast. Sunny. Warm. Easy to blend in. Easier to slip out unnoticed. Except now I noticed. Everything. I sat down at the table. Put my phone on speaker. Opened the message thread. There was only one name I needed to find. The only person more betrayed than me. I typed, "Your husband and my wife have a reservation tomorrow. Room 845. The message went green. Delivered. Read. She called in 40 seconds. Her voice was flat, measured. I knew it, she said. Tell me where and when. I'll bring everything. No tears. No questions. Just alignment. And that was the moment I realized I wasn't alone. Not anymore. 2 strangers. 1 betrayal. In a hotel room waiting to become a courtroom. I've never believed in divine justice. Not the kind people post about when a cheater trips on a sidewalk or gets caught in some cosmic twist of irony. No. If you want justice, you plan it. If you want retribution, you get your hands dirty. Or at least your fingerprints. So after I sat there staring at that message, with the glow of betrayal still fresh on my retinas, I poured another cup of coffee, opened my laptop, and started searching. The man. The mystery. The co-star of my wife's little 4:46 a.m. romance. It didn't take long. He was the kind of idiot who posts gym selfies with hashtags like #GrindNeverStops and #MondayMotivation. His profile was public, wide open, full of the kind of curated life you build when you're desperate for attention but scared of being found out. There were vacation pics, Bali, Greece, Napa. All of them staged with the same woman. Tall, brunette, a jawline that could slice through granite. In one of the photos, she was holding a dog wearing a bow tie. Underneath, 10 years married and still laughing. Love this man. Her name was Dana. I stared at her for a second. The image of her smiling beside him felt like a ghost photo. Like one of those vintage shots where no one knows the building behind them is already on fire. I opened my messages and typed, "Your husband and my wife have a reservation tomorrow. Room 845. I hit send. 40 seconds later, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. I answered, bracing for screaming or denial or some desperate plea for proof. Instead, her voice was low, sharp, like someone who had known the truth for years but had just gotten the paperwork. I knew it, she said. Not shocked. Just finished. Tell me where and when. I'll bring everything. That sentence told me two things immediately. One, this wasn't his first mistake. And two, she had been waiting for someone to confirm what she already suspected. All she needed was a match. I was the match. Tomorrow, 4:30 a.m., Glenwood Hotel, downtown. They check into room 845. We take the suite next door. Silence for half a beat. I'll bring my father, she said. I blinked. Sorry. He's a retired judge. He's been itching for something to do since the stroke. This will light him up. I let out the smallest laugh. You're serious? Oh, I'm way past serious, she said. You want noise? Or surgical? Silent. Precise. Total. Perfect, she said. My daughter's coming too. I hesitated. How old? 22. She's the one who caught his scent on the laundry last time. Jesus. All right, I said. We'll need someone with legal authority on my end. My brother-in-law's a lawyer. Quiet, discreet. He hates drama, but loves a good win. Text me his name. I'll prep everything. And just like that, we weren't two strangers anymore. We were partners. Not in grief, but in architecture. We were going to build a collapse. Not just let it happen. As I listened to her voice, calm and logistical, it struck me how similar we were. Not in age. She was younger, mid-40s maybe, but in demeanor. Neither of us cried. Neither of us asked for details. We didn't want dirt. We wanted strategy. I told her I'd confirm the reservation and send her the floor plan of the hotel. I already had a friend on the inside, an ex-colleague who worked in hospitality tech. Getting the suite next door was easy. Neutral party on the paperwork. Alias booking. No trace. I'll bring the documents, she said before hanging up. Photos. Texts. Screen grabs. If we do this, we do it with facts. Agreed. And one more thing, she added. Don't talk to her again. Don't confront. Don't warn. If we want the reaction raw, she can't suspect a thing. That was never a question, I said. I haven't said a word since the message. Good, she replied. Then let's end this with silence. The line went dead. I stared at my reflection in the screen for a moment. My face looked unfamiliar. Not because of the betrayal, but because of the focus. The clarity. Like I'd slipped into some alternate version of myself where I wasn't just reacting. I was composing, directing. And suddenly, I wasn't hurt anymore. I was preparing a performance. For room 845. It's easy to fantasize about revenge when you've been wronged. The dramatic speech, the gasps, the thunderous exit. But fantasy doesn't hold up in real rooms, under real lights, when real lives are about to be dismantled. That kind of outcome doesn't happen by accident. It takes orchestration. And we had a hell of a symphony to compose. Dana and I met the next morning, neutral ground, a coffee shop tucked behind a bank in a business district. She wore sunglasses and no makeup, hair pulled back, sharp and silent like someone who had already buried the version of herself that tolerated the lie. I brought a folder with a printed copy of the message. She laid down her own packet, timestamps, emails, receipts. She had more on her husband than the IRS. She ordered an espresso. No milk. No sugar. I don't want revenge, she said without looking up. I want exposure. I want to make sure they remember this moment for the rest of their lives. Not as the day they got caught, but as the day they were seen. I nodded. No yelling. No drama. Just structure. I brought the right people, she said. My father's in. He was a judge for 32 years. Family court, civil litigation. He knows how to look someone in the eye while they melt. Does he know what it's about? She stirred her espresso. He knows enough. And he's got a bone to pick with my husband. Long story. Not mine to tell. I can bring my brother-in-law, I said. He's handled our estate planning for years. Quiet guy, but ruthless when it counts. He doesn't just understand leverage, he creates it. We'll need witnesses, she said. But only people who matter. Her kids were old enough to know the score. One was in college, the other finishing high school. Dana explained it simply. They've watched him lie for years. I won't protect their feelings by hiding what he is anymore. We agreed. This wasn't going to be some messy ambush. This was going to be a presentation. We would let the cheaters walk themselves into the lion's den, and we wouldn't raise our voices once. I called a friend who used to work in high-end hotel security, gave him the situation. He put me in touch with the assistant manager of the Glenwood Hotel downtown. Quiet place, mostly business clientele. She was understanding, more than I expected. Once she saw the screenshot, she said, "We've had this couple stay here before. I remember her perfume. Charming." We booked the suite next door to 845 under a corporate block name. No direct ties to either of us. Early check-in. No housekeeping. Special note added. Do not disturb unless summoned. The manager agreed to flag their arrival and give us a silent heads-up. We even requested a single-use keycard to room 845 under pretext of a surprise breakfast delivery, which they were more than happy to accommodate for a fee. The plan was straightforward. They would check in, thinking they were about to enjoy another smug, consequence-free morning. He'd probably bring her overpriced pastries and lukewarm hotel coffee. She'd pretend it was spontaneous. They'd giggle like teenagers while the real adults sat just a few feet away, quietly setting the table for judgment. Dana's father would be seated in the armchair closest to the entrance, flanked by her daughter. My brother-in-law would be posted near the connecting door, ready with a binder of documentation and 2 notarized letters. One addressed to my wife, one to her paramour. My letter opened with the words, "Your exit begins here." No police, no public posting, no screaming fits, just surgical exposure. And that's when Dana said something that stuck with me. We're not punishing them. We're correcting them. They got too comfortable thinking no one was watching. We finalized everything down to the minute. For 30 a.m., the morning of the meetup, we'd be in the suite. They always arrived early. She didn't like the risk of seeing co-workers in the lobby. She always wore the same robe. He always carried the tray. They thought they were sneaking around in the dark. But this time, the lights would already be on. By noon, we had confirmation. The room was booked in his name. Same time slot as the message. No deviation. We were locked in. When I got home, she greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, told me she was really swamped this week, and asked if I'd be okay holding down the fort. I smiled. Of course. We all have our little projects. The night before the reckoning was almost beautiful in its cruelty. She wore the green dress, the one she hadn't touched in 2 years, said it made her feel too mature back when I bought it for our anniversary. But tonight, she looked radiant in it, smiling, tossing her hair, dabbing just enough lipstick to say, "I care how I look, but not for you." We had dinner at home. Lasagna. Her recipe. One of those meals wrapped in history. Too many anniversaries, too many we made it throughs. She served it with that cheap Chianti she always said tasted like memories. That night, it tasted like a goodbye she thought I'd never hear. She sat across from me, slicing into her plate like the world was still round and full of shared jokes. Her smile was light, almost rehearsed, the kind of smile you wear when you've already packed your escape route. She reached across the table, rested her hand on mine. "Thanks for being patient lately," she said. "The new project at work is just overwhelming. They want us in early tomorrow for a team brainstorm." I nodded, poured her another glass. "Well, you know me. Always happy to help where I can." She smiled wider. "That's what I've always appreciated about you. You don't make things harder." I wonder if she heard herself, or if that line came from somewhere rehearsed. Something she'd said to him in bed. He doesn't make things harder. She cleared her plate before I did, leaned back with a little stretch, like a cat stretching on a windowsill after knocking over a vase. Then she stood. "I need to pack a few things tonight. Presentation notes, backup dress, some perfume." I nodded. "Of course." She lingered for a second at the door before heading upstairs. And I just sat there, fort paused midair, the lasagna suddenly too heavy in my throat. Upstairs, I heard drawers open. The soft zip of her cosmetic bag. The faint clink of a perfume bottle, her favorite one, the floral amber she wore when she wanted to feel expensive. For a man she wasn't married to. I took my time finishing the meal. Cleaned up. Washed each plate slowly, like I was giving the silence time to settle around me. Coat the house like fresh dust. When I walked into our room, she was zipping up the overnight bag. It wasn't her usual work tote. It was smaller, sleeker, the kind you carry when you're not planning to bring anything back. She smiled again, catching me in the mirror's reflection. "Early day tomorrow." "Same here," I said, undoing my shirt cuff. "I'll be out before the sun's up." "Really?" she asked, a little surprised. "Where you going?" I shrugged. Just something I've been planning for a while. She didn't press. Not even a flicker of suspicion. She was too busy sliding her lipstick tube into the side pocket and checking her lashes in the mirror. I walked over, kissed her forehead. Soft. Careful. Sleep well, I said. You too, she murmured, not looking up. She crawled into bed before me and turned away, like always. As if turning her back to me had become some strange form of muscle memory. I lay down a few minutes later, didn't even bother setting an alarm. Didn't need to. She was out cold in 10 minutes, and I watched her shoulders rise and fall like she hadn't already set tomorrow's stage. I reached under the bed, pulled out the envelope. The one with my letter to her. My lawyer's draft. The printout of the text. And the prepaid divorce filing fee, dated weeks ago. I tucked it back in. Waited. The room smelled like her perfume. Stronger than usual. She always overdid it when she was nervous. Or guilty. Or trying to cover someone else's cologne. I lay there with my hands folded on my chest, listening to the ceiling fan whir above us. My mind didn't wander. It focused. Sharp as a scalpel. Everything was in place. Dana and her team would arrive an hour before. The hotel room was ready. Our seats were chosen. Our voices rehearsed. Our silence loaded. She snored lightly beside me. At 3:58 a.m., her alarm buzzed. She reached out, silenced it, slipped out of bed like a thief. And I just watched her go. Robe. Makeup bag. Overnight duffel. She didn't look back. Not once. She never knew I was already dressed beneath the sheets. My tie was already knotted. My shoes beside the door. She thought she was stepping into a private fantasy. But I was already waiting in the next room, with the rest of the audience. The Glenwood Hotel didn't look like a place where lives came apart. That was the point. It was clean, discreet, a little too beige. Corporate enough for people to assume nothing messy ever happened here. Just board meetings, client dinners, quiet affairs tucked between clean sheets, and lies told over buffet eggs. We arrived before dawn. Dana walked in first, sunglasses on despite the hour, crisp navy blouse, pressed slacks, hair pulled so tight it might have sliced glass. She moved like a prosecutor entering a courtroom she'd already won. The desk clerk greeted her with professional detachment, handed over the key card to the suite without a word. Her reservation was listed under a holding company name. Untraceable, just like we'd planned. 10 minutes later, I followed. I wore black slacks, a gray jacket, no tie, just enough formality to suggest authority without demanding attention. The kind of outfit a man wears when he wants you to wonder who he is, not ask. The same clerk glanced up, registered me, and gave the smallest nod, barely perceptible. But it was there. He had already been briefed by the assistant manager we spoke to 2 days prior. No housekeeping, no interruptions, room service only upon request. And most importantly, if anyone complained, the complaints were to be rerouted directly to us. Dana's father was already seated in the lounge, reading a print edition of the Times like it was 1997. He didn't look up, didn't need to. He exuded that retired judge presence, serious without being theatrical. His mere existence in that lobby felt like a silent threat to any misbehavior within a 100-mile radius. Next to him sat my brother-in-law. Suit. No tie. Carrying a briefcase that held more than just legal forms. It held years of estate documents, trust disclosures, and a pre-written summary of marital asset division. We weren't here to ask questions. We were here to close files. I gave them both a small nod. No words, just movement. Upstairs, Dana's kids were already in the suite. The older one, her daughter, had insisted on coming. She said she wanted to watch the curtain drop. The younger one, quiet, reserved, stood by the window and watched the city lights shift into morning. Dana had raised them well. They weren't here to cause a scene. They were here because, for once, they deserved to see the truth land without filters. The suite itself was pristine. Neutral tones, soft lighting, plush chairs arranged like witnesses at a deposition. Room 845 was directly next door. The connecting door had been double-checked, the latch disengaged on our side. We'd used the hallway entrance for dramatic effect. The walls between the two rooms were thinner than you'd expect. We could already hear the faint hum of the air vent from 845 kicking on. We set everything down with surgical precision. The documents were stacked neatly on the coffee table. Dana's packet of screenshots was labeled by date. My envelope held the screenshot from 4:46 a.m., enlarged and mounted on stiff backing like an exhibit. At exactly 4:23 a.m., the front desk messaged Dana's burner phone. Room 845, checked in. Right on time. We didn't speak. Dana took a seat beside her father. She pulled out a small mirror, checked her lipstick once, then placed the mirror face down. My brother-in-law opened his briefcase, extracted a single pen, and set it on the table like a blade. I took a seat nearest the door, not for intimidation, just for proximity. There was no adrenaline, just focus. No one was twitchy, no one was sweating. This wasn't a confrontation. This was a ceremony, and everything was unfolding exactly as we wrote it. At 4:31 a.m., we heard a muffled laugh through the wall. Her laugh. I hadn't heard it like that in years. Unfiltered, giddy, the kind of laugh you save for someone who hasn't seen you pay bills or cry at funerals. The laugh of a woman living a second life with no taxes due. Dana didn't flinch. She just reached for her phone, opened the recorder, and tapped the red button. I looked down at my watch. 4:33 a.m. Outside the suite, the hallway was silent. Carpeted, dimly lit. I stood, adjusted my jacket, checked the door's peephole. Nothing yet. Then, at 4:35 a.m., we heard footsteps. Casual, confident. A man's voice. His voice. He was talking about the croissants he brought. Apparently the bakery across the street opened early, and he'd grabbed her favorites. The audacity of romance before destruction. It was almost poetic. Dana stood. Her father followed. We waited for the keycard beep. The soft click of betrayal becoming tangible. And then, room 845 opened. They were inside. I turned to the group, nodded once. 5 minutes, Dana said. No. I replied, checking my watch again. Let's give them 10. There was something elegant about that. About letting them believe, for just a little longer, that they were safe. At exactly 4:45 a.m., the hallway settled into stillness. The elevator at the end pinged, and the door slid open with a hiss that felt louder than it should have. Footsteps. 2 sets. One heavier, one light and bouncing. We watched from the narrow crack of our suite door, barely an inch wide, just enough to see shapes and shadows. There they were. He carried a hotel tray with both hands, 2 cappuccinos, a fruit bowl, and what looked like croissants wrapped in wax paper. His back was straight, confident. A man who thought his time was earned, not borrowed. A man comfortable cheating in silence, never once expecting the silence might stare back. She wore the navy robe from our bathroom closet, the one she used to reserve for anniversaries. Hair tied up with that cream scrunchie I bought her in Rome. Her face was fresh, foundation, eyeliner, lips barely tinted. Just enough to say, I woke up like this. She looked 10 years younger. She looked happy. They stood at room 845 for a second. She reached into her small purse, pulled out the keycard, and swiped. The lock light flashed green. Click. They entered. No hesitation. No caution. Dana closed her eyes like she was sealing a vault. Her grip on her phone tightened, her thumb hovering over the stop button on the voice recorder. Her father let out a low breath through his nose, the way old men do when they've seen too many lies and know exactly how this one ends. I stood and straightened my jacket. Now, I said. We opened the door to our suite. Not loud, not abrupt, just enough to let the cool hallway air meet us like a witness. The hallway stretched short between us and room 845. 10 paces. 12 if you were dragging your feet. We didn't. We walked as a unit. Dana to my right, her father behind her, my brother-in-law carrying the documents like a priest holding scripture. The air in that hallway was thick. Not hot, not cold, just dense, like it knew this moment had mass. At the door of 845, we paused. Dana knocked once. No answer. She knocked again, firm. Then we heard it. His voice, muffled, casual. Just a sec. She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. He opened the door wearing a hotel robe, matching hers. The same one. Belted hastily. His hair was still damp. His expression collapsed in on itself the second he saw Dana's face. Then her father stepped forward, and I followed. Behind us, the door to room 845 hung open. Inside, my wife was seated at the small bistro table near the window, fork in one hand, a slice of melon in the other. She looked up, and time slowed. I will never forget the look on her face. The melon dropped. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Her eyes darted to me. Then Dana. Then Dana's father. Then the papers in my brother-in-law's hand. She stood suddenly, too fast, knocking the chair back. I took one step into the room. Good morning, I said. Calm. Even. She blinked, as if trying to wake up. What is this? Dana answered. Accountability. Her husband backed into the kitchenette, holding up a hand like we were pointing weapons. Okay, whoa, let's not. Don't speak, Dana said. He closed his mouth. My wife tried to move toward me. I can explain. I shook my head once. No. You already scheduled this explanation. Same time tomorrow, remember? She froze. Dana walked in fully now, heels clicking on the floor like gavels. Her daughter entered behind us and closed the door. No screaming. No chaos. Just air. Thick with shame. Dana's father looked around and said, "Let's sit." He sat. Everyone followed. Except the cheaters. They stood there, stripped bare by silence, and for the first time, had nowhere to hide. It wasn't just a confrontation. It was a presentation, with the accused finally in the room. He froze mid-step, like a bad actor caught in the middle of a lie and realizing the audience wasn't just watching, they were filming. The tray he was holding slipped from his hands in slow motion. A cappuccino tilted, then flipped. The porcelain cup shattered against the carpet with a muted crack. Croissants hit the floor like relics from a happier script. One rolled under the bed and vanished. My wife, no, the woman I was married to, stood behind him in the doorway, mouth agape, her robe cinched hastily and now somehow obscene in its familiarity. She stared at me like she'd seen a ghost. Not the dead kind, the kind that remembers everything. Dana stepped forward, each heel strike deliberate. She didn't blink. Morning. He opened his mouth to respond, then caught the sight of her father walking in right behind her. The old man nodded politely, like he was arriving at a board meeting, then gestured toward the seating area with the kind of calm that only comes from decades of issuing judgments that ended families. "Let's talk about accountability," he said, voice smooth as courtroom marble. My wife flinched. Actually flinched. "What is this?" she whispered, voice cracking. I didn't answer at first. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out my phone, and tapped the screen. The screenshot. Still there. Unedited. Lit up like scripture. I turned the screen toward her. Room 845. Same time tomorrow. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. White. All the color drained from her face like water being sucked out of a drowning ship. She staggered backward, one hand gripping the edge of the breakfast table for balance. How did you?" Her lover, still barefoot, pressed his back against the kitchenette wall like we'd come with guns instead of documents. His robe had come partially undone, and he clutched it closed like modesty was still salvageable. Dana tilted her head, eyes sharp as scalpels. "You don't get to ask questions. Not anymore." That's when her attorney, my brother-in-law, stepped forward and clicked open his briefcase. The sound was loud in that quiet room, like thunder behind glass. He didn't say a word, just pulled out 2 manila folders. Thick ones, labeled with clean black marker. A. Richards and S. Richards. Dana's ex was the first to speak, because of course he was. His voice cracked like a teenager's. "Okay, look, let's not turn this into some courtroom thing. We can talk." "You've already had your turn to talk," Dana cut in. "This is us responding." My wife looked at me. Her voice dropped into that soft, rehearsed tone she always used when she wanted to diffuse something before it exploded. "Let's just you and me, can we?" "No," I said flatly. "You've already scheduled our next conversation, remember? Room 845. Tomorrow. Same time." Her lip trembled. Dana's daughter walked in then, calm, composed. She pulled a chair and sat near the edge of the room, placing a small handheld recorder on the table. "Go ahead," she said, to no one in particular. Dana's father crossed his legs. "These documents," he said, lifting the folders, "are notarized. They include a timeline, correspondence, witness statements, and a pre-negotiated settlement outline." The man in the robe, Dana's husband, actually started to sweat. "You're bluffing," he said. "You don't have." Dana raised her phone. "Here's your voice from last week. If I could spend every morning with you, I would." I hate lying to her. "Want me to keep going?" He shut up. My wife finally sank onto the edge of the bed, hands shaking. Her shoulders curled inward. The robe no longer elegant. Just fabric covering a collapse. I didn't plan for it to go this far," she mumbled. I smiled, cold and small. "Oh, I know," I said. "You only planned for it to go as far as I'd never know." The air was still. The moment suspended like a dropped glass frozen mid-air, just before the shatter. Dana's attorney handed her the folder. She opened it, flipped through a few pages, then turned to her father. "You think this qualifies as moral abandonment?" He gave a slow, almost gentle nod. "It qualifies," he said. "And it's enough." And in that moment, the gravity of the room shifted. We weren't angry. We were finished. They weren't confused. They were cornered. And the weight of every lie they ever told had finally shown up to collect. The silence after the documents landed was thicker than the lies they'd been living under. You could feel the room tightening, compressing, like a balloon being filled past its limit. But no one moved. Not even Dana's ex. He just stood there in his crumpled robe, sweat glistening down his temple, like someone who'd finally realized the private moment he'd built was now a courtroom. No judge, no jury, just the truth, honed to a blade. That's when Dana's daughter stood up. She was calm, too calm, like the rage had already passed, and all that remained was the ash. "You told me," she said, looking directly at her mother, "to never lie to my future husband." Her voice didn't shake. It was quiet, steady. The woman, who 10 minutes ago had been laughing over croissants, froze like a deer hearing the click of a rifle. "I remember the words exactly," the daughter continued. "You said, lies rot the inside of a marriage. If you can't tell the truth, don't get married at all." No one interrupted. Dana didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just sat down slowly, folding her hands in her lap, like someone bracing for impact. Her daughter held the room. "You don't get to say those things to me anymore," she said, flat. "You don't get to be the wise one. You're not the person I thought you were." Dana's husband tried to chime in. "Okay, but..." "Shut up," the daughter snapped, never even turning her head. And he did, like a dog whose leash just yanked too tight. Dana opened her folder, slow and deliberate. She didn't speak as she laid the contents on the table. Photos, timestamped screenshots, an email thread that began with "I miss your scent" and ended with "she has no clue." She didn't say a word as she placed the last item, a receipt from a hotel minibar, same room, different week. My wife shifted beside me, her breath catching. She opened her mouth. I raised my hand. She stopped. "No," I said. Calm. Measured. "You already spoke. I'm replying now." She blinked. I stood, walked to the table, and picked up a printout from Dana's pile. It was a copy of an Instagram story, 2 champagne glasses by a fireplace. Caption: "Best mornings are the secret ones." I flipped it toward her. "You posted this while telling me you were at a wellness seminar," I said. Her eyes filled. Tears were coming, but they weren't grief. They were panic. She'd been caught, and the mask had been ripped too fast. Dana's father leaned forward, folding his hands. "I've seen plenty of affairs," he said, voice low. "What makes this one notable is the scale of deception, the coordination, the duration. You both built a second life and made your families hostages in the first." Dana nodded once. "This qualifies as moral abandonment. On paper. On principle." My brother-in-law added, "The filing's airtight. The judge we're routing it through has already reviewed. Preliminary protection measures are included." Her lover tried again. "Wait, protection measures?" Dana turned her head, finally meeting his eyes. "There's a reason you haven't been invited home in 3 weeks. There's a reason your keycard at the office stopped working yesterday." He blinked. You talked to?" "Yes," she said. "To everyone." The floor dropped out from under them then. Not literally, but emotionally. Like they finally understood the room wasn't closing in. It had already closed. My wife started sobbing. Not pretty tears. The kind that come when dignity is bleeding out of you too fast to stop. She looked up at me. "Please, can we just talk?" I shook my head. "No. This is the talk. Everything after this is paperwork." "I didn't mean to. You did everything deliberately." I cut in. "You thought I'd stay quiet forever. That I'd die a doormat. But this isn't revenge. This is math. You made a calculation, and it came up short." Dana's daughter stood again. "The thing that hurts most is that you thought we'd never find out. That you could wear your fake wisdom like perfume, and we'd all be too polite to sniff twice." Her voice cracked. Just once. Then she walked to the door, opened it, and said to no one in particular, "I'm done listening," and left. No one followed her. Because there was nothing else to say? He cracked first. Of course he did. Men like him always think they're the puppet masters until someone cuts the strings in front of an audience. After Dana's daughter left, he looked around the room like a man realizing the stage had burned down mid-performance and all his exits were blocked. His robe had come loose again, and he didn't bother fixing it this time. No shoes. No wallet. No keys. Just silence pressing down like a lead blanket. "Okay," he mumbled, more to himself than anyone else. "Okay, I'm gonna go." Nobody answered. He turned toward Dana. Probably expected her to stop him, maybe plead or scold or fall into old habits. Instead, she looked at him like a mannequin, eyes hollow, mouth set. No hatred, just extinction, like he was already dead and she was just remembering what he looked like. He opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and vanished. Not a word from anyone. Dana didn't follow. She didn't even flinch. The only sound was the slow exhale of my wife's breath as she sat down on the edge of the bed, trembling slightly. Her back hunched. Her hands locked between her knees like a child waiting for punishment. I didn't think you'd, she started. I stared at her. No words. No expression. She looked up, her eyes watery, her voice barely audible. I didn't think you'd actually do something like this. I know, I said. And I meant it. I knew that in her mind, I'd always be passive. The one who forgave. Who nodded and went back to mowing the lawn or paying the taxes or refilling the coffee filter. She thought my silence was compliance. She forgot it could be something else, something worse. She reached out, fingers grazing toward mine like muscle memory was trying to save her. I stepped back. She froze. And for the first time since we walked into room 845, I saw it settle in her eyes. This wasn't just about getting caught. This was about losing the illusion of control. Realizing she wasn't ahead of the story. She wasn't even in the same chapter. Dana's father stepped forward then. He held a thick envelope, pale ivory with a single name written in fountain pen across the front, hers. He didn't throw it. Didn't thrust it into her lap. Just held it out, calm as always. I suggest, he said, you read what's about to happen next. She didn't take it immediately. Her fingers hovered, like the paper might burn. Then she took it, gently, like it contained explosives. It did, in a way. Inside was a sequence she hadn't prepared for. A draft settlement, supported by evidence, statements, and a pre-negotiated custody agreement for her silence. Copies of trust documents showing the portions she thought she'd claim were already transferred weeks ago. A post-nuptial clause signed during a vacation 3 years ago, buried in the paperwork she never bothered to read. There were no threats inside, just inevitabilities. I watched her expression shift in real time. Confusion, dread, recognition, collapse. I thought you loved me, she whispered. I didn't laugh. That would have been easy. I did, I said. That's why this hurts less than it should. She looked back down at the envelope, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Do I get to say anything? She asked. You already said everything, I replied. In the dark. To him. Repeatedly. Dana sat near the window now, hands folded, eyes outside. She hadn't spoken since he left. She didn't need to. She had already detonated her half of the story. The silence was her victory. My brother-in-law checked his watch. We're done here, he said. My wife didn't move. So I did. I walked to the table, gathered the last of the documents, and slipped them into a folder. I nodded at Dana's father. He stood. Dana rose slowly, her phone back in hand. I turned to my wife one last time. I'll be in touch through legal channels. Any further contact from you will be ignored unless it's through counsel. Her face crumpled. She opened her mouth again. I walked out. Later that afternoon, when the sun had turned the city into a gold-lit cathedral of consequences, I walked back into the Glenwood Hotel, not with fury, not with tears, just with purpose. The front desk clerk spotted me and gave a short nod. She didn't ask questions. Good people don't when they already know what the answer looks like. The manager was waiting in the lobby, already briefed. Room 845, I said quietly. Just a moment. She walked with me to the elevator, no words exchanged. In her hand was the keycard I'd requested in advance, the final step in a plan that hadn't relied on hope or confrontation, just timing. We stepped into the room. It smelled like spilled coffee and shame. The breakfast tray was still overturned, a single croissant smashed beneath the heel of someone who left in a hurry. The bed was rumpled, not from passion but from the weight of what had unfolded hours before. I didn't touch anything. Just walked over to the inside of the door and pulled a folded page from my coat. It was the original screenshot, room 845. Same time tomorrow, printed on glossy paper and cut neatly along the edges like a photograph. I'd mounted it on a white backing, with one line written beneath in clean, deliberate cursive. Next time, check who's already checked in. No signature. No threat. Just fact. I peeled the tape from my pocket and affixed it to the inside of the door, at eye level, so that whoever walked in next, whether it was hotel staff or some future version of her trying to relive a lie, would see the warning. A silent artifact of precision. The manager said nothing, just gave me a glance that said more than condolences ever could. I nodded, handed her a sealed envelope. Thank you, gratuity, and a written request for the footage to be wiped clean after 24 hours. We left the room as it was. By the end of that week, 2 things happened. First, the divorce papers were filed. Simultaneously, mine and Dana's. Her lawyer handled both. There were no contested assets, no spousal support, not a single request for mediation. Because when the facts are this loud, the courtroom stays silent. Second, I changed the locks at home. I didn't tell her, just waited. She tried to come by 2 days later to get a few things. She stood on the front porch for 10 minutes, fumbling with keys that no longer turned, then sat in her car for 20 more. I watched from upstairs. She never rang the bell. Dana, for her part, never asked to debrief. We weren't friends. We were collaborators. The kind who meet once, execute with clarity, and walk away with clean hands. A week after the incident, I got a small envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photo. Room 845. Door open. The screenshot still taped in place. The lighting just right. A timestamp in the corner. No message. Just proof. They never saw each other again after that day. No calls. No texts. Not even a goodbye. I imagine sometimes they replay that morning in their heads, wondering what exactly tipped the scales. Wondering when the illusion cracked. Who saw what? Who told? Who planned? But the truth is, it wasn't any one thing. It was everything. Every lie told on a lunch break. Every team meeting that was just code for cheap robes and expensive coffee. Every time she smiled at me with his scent still in her hair. It all added up. And it all ended in room 845. They'll both remember it. And I'll never have to say another word.